I'm gonna go back a little bit in time, and I'm gonna speak about Paul Mooney. Those of you who know Paul Mooney was a comedian. He wrote for Richard Pryor, right? And we came across Paul Mooney's work and a lot of the stuff sketch comedy things he did for In Living Color and the Chappelle Show, and he was writing for all this stuff, right? He did the Negro Damas stuff, but they always don't remember Paul Mooney. He did Negro Damas on Dave Chappelle's show, but he has history going back with Eddie Murphy. Not Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor. Being a writer on his shows and things like that. Now he even wrote on Sanford and Son. And I saw Paul Mooney perform one time, and it was good. I thought he was the blackest thing since, the Black Panthers. He come with his, deep insight on race and things of that nature, and white people this and white people that. And he used to say stuff to make white people get up and walk out the audience and walk out, just walk out of the clubs where he's performing. But he was real popular with his stand-up and everything. But then, it broke my heart to find out that was all an act. All that black talk, which was just talk. That was part of Paul Mooney's act, because I always figured there was some sugar in his tank, and he was trying to hide and conceal that, but you could see he couldn't really hide it. He was into punk on punk activity. He had his ass slammed out, especially in early Hollywood, where they say it's a rumor, but then it's not even being a rumor no more. It's more like urban legend with Paul Mooney. This was the story. Richard Pryor did a roast and talked about how Paul Mooney, in order for them to get on in Hollywood to start writing for shows like Sanford and Son, it was these Caucasian people that headed those studios. And a lot of them was into punk on punk activity. A lot of them was sodomites, And so one of these, J-dubs, who happened to be a sodomite, one of these J-dubs, he invited Paul Mooney to his rod. From what they said, Paul Mooney went in a room with this dude and sucked him off, And Richard Pryor said he ain't let him, come in his mouth, and he did his thing on this J-Dub, this Caucasian dude, and who had some power in Hollywood. And from there, Paul Mooney was writing on TV shows and writing on and getting work and everything, and getting money, and even starting the Buddy Holly movie. So, he had children and all that. He lived his life, obviously, as a bisexual. But once I heard that, I'm like, I can't look at you the same no more. You talking about Caucasian males when you had one of their rods in your mouth. And you was dealing with, Caucasian females, but you said in your comedy act, if you see me with a white woman, I was holding her for the police. That was a joke. You was messing with Lori Petty, a white girl actress from Hollywood. But, again, not that I care that you do what you want to do, but don't be. He was just a big hypocrite. Paul Mooney was a big hypocrite. And I remember the comedian Pierre, saying that Paul Mooney was into, he, after one of his shows, he said he watched Paul Mooney sit up and talk to these white people who came to see his show for about 15 minutes. He kept some black people waiting, like, for a good little minute. And then when he did speak to them, it was, like, brief, like, and it goes right back to what I said. A lot of them talk all that black shit. They talk all that black talk. And then, behind the scenes is something else. It's punk on punk activity, Hollywood regular sodomite activity to white girls and all this other stuff. But then you come up here talking all this black shit. And people was like, Paul Mooney deep. Right. Not to even mention the fact that, he got at Richard Pryor's son allegedly. And Richard Pryor's son pretty much confirmed it. Like, you took Richard Pryor's son butt. You took his butt. So like, how are we gonna take you serious? I can't even watch nothing Paul Mooney do no more, because I'm the type of man, When I look at actors and I think to myself, I say, yeah, they playing these masculine roles and whatnot. It's hard to look at these guys again once you done heard some strong allegations, and pretty much, well, I say strong to the point where it's pretty much factual that these dudes engaged in punk on punk activity, some chump on chump, you know, some man on man shit. I'm like, nah, I don't want to see you after that. Sorry, I can't divorce, that, that image, all that stuff I hear, I heard about you from your roles you play. I can't take you seriously. Like with Will Smith, I can't take him seriously. I can't take him seriously. I can't look at Dwayne. I can't look at none of these guys like that. I can't really look at Richard Pryor like that because, you talk about women and sex and vagina, and then you was messing with a punk too. And I heard he was doing punk on punk activity out there too because, them Hollywood people do. These Negroes will do anything to get on out there, man. They'll engage in all that. They'll go to the mansion parties. Bend over and grab their ankles, get high on drugs and, or whatever. And and then use the drugs as an excuse, for whatever happens next, which is usually some pole to pole activity. That's that new documentary, Will Smith and Pole to Pole. I'm like, man, I don't want to hear. I was like, why they had to say that, man? It just made me think of him and Dwayne Martin all over again, and those allegations that guy, Brother Bilal, who I said in my first video, he definitely got sugar in his tank because they ain't gonna let him be around all that. Like I said, when you got that soy energy on you, when you got that energy on, they'll let you be around and see stuff. And if they let you in that inner circle to get close to them to see that stuff, then that means they thought you was just like that too. They thought you was one of them as well. They figured, they was amongst, one of their own kind. Same thing with Eddie Murphy with these allegations about him and Johnny Gill tongue kissing allegedly. And this dude just came off the cuff and said this was a dude who was an actor. He said, I was out there, he said he was going to some club, this guy said on YouTube, he said he seen Eddie Murphy tongue kissing Johnny Gill. That's what he said. Allegedly. And then follow it up with all of the stuff he heard about the transgender, a prostitute out there who he picked up, and then they saying he frequented the hotel with punks, motherfuckers with wigs on and whatnot, chicks with dicks, and he was into all that, allegedly. Heard about some punk on punk activity with him picking up transgender out there back. I heard about Eddie Murphy back all the way to the 80s, man. In the 80s, the Saturday Night Live days. And I don't understand these dudes. Like, you got access to all these fine ass women, real women with real vaginas, and you want to engage in punk on punk activity with a motherfucker with a wig on and a rod, and who got some hormone shots and grew out his hair, but he decided he didn't want to go all the way through with it. He didn't want to get his rod chopped off and be a complete punk and man. No, I can't. I'm sorry, man. I'm looking at this picture of Paul Mooney as I'm doing it right now. And like I said, after them allegations came out about him and Richard Pryor's son, about him taking Richard Pryor's son, but when that came out, he just disappeared, man. He just literally disappeared off the scene until he passed away. He died in 2021. He was 79 years old. And like I said, I can't take him seriously. I can't take nothing. I can't watch none of the stuff he said because I'm just going to think about, him on his knees in some office for some white boy, giving him top. Because I can't take a man seriously who let another man put his hands on him, or he put his hands on another man. I can't take you seriously. I can't, if you an open sodomite, you know what I'm saying, you into punk on punk activity and you just say that, I got more respect for that than, you coming up here talking all this black shit and you heterosexual and, and you into women and black this and black that. And nah, no, you not. No, you not. And honestly, I feel sorry for children who got parents like this. Men, especially children who got fathers who punked out, You dudes shouldn't even have children, man. Don't embarrass your children like that. But, so much for Mr. Paul Mooney, the biggest hypocrite or one of the biggest hypocrites in comedy. Out.